I had built an empire on the principle that everything has a price. I bought companies' real estate loyalty. I thought I could buy my son's time, his attention, his presence. I never realized that in the final terrible transaction, I would be paying with my soul. My name is Genevieve Dubois. To the world, I was a titan of industry, a woman who had clawed her way up from nothing to build a private equity firm that devoured other lesser companies. My name was whispered with a mixture of fear and reverence in boardrooms across the country. My life was a fortress of wealth, a testament to my relentless ambition. I lived in a sprawling minimalist mansion of glass and limestone that clung to a hillside overlooking the ocean, a house so vast and silent you could hear the sound of a check clearing. It was a monument to my success and the loneliest place on earth. After a divorce that felt more like a corporate merger dissolving my life had become a series of transactions. I managed my friendships like assets and my romantic entanglements like short-term investments. The only non-transactional relationship I had, the only one that truly mattered, was with my son Caleb. And I was losing him. At 20, Caleb was a brilliant, ambitious young man with a fire in his eyes that reminded me painfully of myself at his age. But his fire was not for my world of hostile takeovers and leveraged buyouts. His passion was for film. He wanted to be a director, a storyteller. He had a vision so clear, so potent that even I in my cynical bottom-line world could see its power. He was home from his sophomore year at NYU, and he had come to me not as a son, but as a supplicant. He needed funding for his thesis film, an ambitious period piece that was his ticket, he believed, to breaking into the industry. The amount he needed was to me a rounding error. To him, it was the entire world. He requested a formal meeting. He came into my home office, a vast, sterile room with a single marble desk and a panoramic view of the Pacific, and he pitched me. He had a PowerPoint presentation, a detailed budget, a storyboard. He was professional, passionate, and utterly desperate. He was a young founder seeking venture capital, and I was the venture capitalist. As I listened to him speak, watching the fervor in his eyes, a cold, terrible idea began to form in the deepest, most desolate part of my heart. For years I had felt him pulling away, escaping into his own world of art, and ideas, a world where I was not needed. His financial dependence had been the last thread connecting us, and with this project he was seeking to sever it to buy his own freedom. And I found to my own horror that I could not bear it. I saw his desperation as an opportunity, a leverage point, a way to keep him tethered to me not just for the summer but perhaps indefinitely. "It's an interesting proposal, Caleb," I said when he had finished, my voice cool, and measured the voice I used in negotiations. "The concept is strong, but the budget is significant. An investment of this size requires a great deal of due diligence." Hope and fear warred in his eyes. "I understand. I have all the numbers." "It's not just about the numbers," I cut in smoothly. "It's about the creator. I need to be confident in the person I'm investing in. I need to know you have the discipline, the focus, the grit to see this through." "I do," he said, his voice earnest. "I'll do whatever it takes." "Good," I said, a slow, predatory smile touching my lips, "because I have some conditions." And so the transaction began. I agreed to consider his proposal to fund his dream, but I attached strings. Golden, glittering strings that would slowly, inexorably bind him to me. I told him he would need to spend the summer at home working under my direct supervision. We would have daily meetings to refine the business plan. He would need to attend several of my corporate and charity functions to learn how to network with potential future investors. I framed it all as a mentorship, an invaluable opportunity for him to learn from my experience. He saw it for what it was, a hostage situation. But he was desperate, so he agreed. Our summer began. The daily meetings in my office were a torturous exercise in power dynamics. I would sit behind my massive desk, the powerful CEO, while he would sit opposite the hopeful applicant. I would critique his vision not on its artistic merits, but on its marketability, its potential for return on investment slowly chipping away at the pure artistic core of his dream and reshaping it into a product. The social events were worse. I would introduce him to my associates not as my son, but as my protege. "This is Caleb," I'd say, my hand resting proprietarily on his arm. "A very promising young filmmaker I'm currently mentoring." He would stand beside me, handsome and silent in the tailored suits I had bought for him, feeling less like a person and more like a new prized acquisition I was showing off. I was parading him like a trophy, a symbol of a maternal success I had never truly felt. The gifts were a key part of my strategy. I bought him a vintage sports car, telling him it was for ease of transportation. I funded a new wardrobe of designer clothes, explaining that presentation is crucial in business. Each gift was a layer of gold on his cage, making it more beautiful and more impossible to escape. He accepted them with a quiet, simmering resentment that I chose to interpret as gratitude. Our dinners were the most dangerous ground. We would sit in the cavernous dining room, the table long enough for 20, and the conversation would inevitably drift from his film to my life. I began to confide in him to show him calculated glimpses of my loneliness. I would talk about the emptiness of the house, the hollow nature of my social obligations, the feeling that my vast success had bought me nothing of real value. "You're the only thing in my life that's real, Caleb," I told him one evening, my voice a carefully rehearsed whisper. The only thing that truly matters. I was performing vulnerability, using my own emotional poverty as a tool of manipulation. I was placing the weight of my happiness on his shoulders, making him responsible for my emotional well-being. It was a cruel, masterful stroke, and I saw it land. The resentment in his eyes began to be tempered with a reluctant pity, with the guilt of a son who feels he is failing his lonely mother. He was being drawn deeper into my web, his own dreams held hostage by my manufactured need. One night he pushed back. We were in the home theater, a room that cost more than most houses, ostensibly reviewing classic films for cinematic research. "Why are you doing this, Mom?" he asked suddenly, his voice quiet but accusatory. "Doing what I asked, feigning innocence." "This," he said, gesturing around the opulent, empty room. "All of this. The meetings, the galas, the control. This isn't about my film, is it?" "Of course it is," I lied smoothly. "I'm teaching you what it takes to succeed." "No," he said, shaking his head, his gaze piercing. "You're teaching me what it costs. You're trying to turn me into you." "And would that be so terrible?" I countered, my voice sharp. "To be successful. To be powerful. To be alone," he shot back. His words struck me with the force of a physical blow. He saw me. He saw the desolate loneliness at the heart of my empire, the truth I spent every waking moment trying to outrun. For a moment I felt a flicker of shame, but it was quickly extinguished by a surge of anger, of fear. The fear of losing him. "You are being ungrateful," I said, my voice dropping to an icy chill. "This is a significant investment. Perhaps you're not mature enough to handle it." I let the threat hang in the air. I was reminding him of the power I held, the transactional nature of our relationship. I saw the fight go out of his eyes, replaced by a look of weary resignation. He was trapped. He knew it, and I knew it. The final night of the summer arrived, the eve of his planned departure back to New York, the night I was to make my final decision on the funding. The tension in the house was a palpable, vibrating thing. I invited him to my study for a final discussion, a glass of vintage champagne to celebrate the end of a successful summer. I had set the stage carefully. I was wearing a simple but elegant silk dress that shimmered in the low light. The champagne was a bottle I had been saving for a special occasion. I wanted the moment to feel significant, final. We sat in the leather chairs facing the vast window, the ocean, a dark, churning mass below. We talked about his project, about the progress he had made. I praised him, told him how impressed I was with his dedication. I was grooming him, fattening him up for the final terrible negotiation. Then I made my move. I turned the conversation as I so often had to myself, to my loneliness. "I'll miss this," I said, my voice a soft, melancholic murmur. "Our talks. Having you here. The house will be so quiet when you're gone." I reached across the small table between us and placed my hand on his. His skin was warm, his hand tense. "You have no idea how much this summer has meant to me, Caleb." He didn't respond, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the dark ocean outside. "You are the best thing I've ever created," I whispered, my voice thick with a genuine, if twisted, emotion. "Far more valuable than any company, any stock, any asset." I squeezed his hand. "You're the only thing I can't bear to lose." The implication was there, hanging in the opulent, silent room, a monstrous, unspoken offer. Your dream, your future in exchange for you. Stay. Don't leave me. Be mine. I watched his face, saw the war raging within him, the ambition, the desperation, the resentment, the guilt. He was a young man being asked to trade his soul for his future. And I was the mother, the investor, the monster demanding the price. He slowly turned his head and looked at me. There was no love in his eyes. There was no passion. There was only a profound, bottomless emptiness, a look of utter and complete defeat. He had finally understood the full terms of our contract. "All right, Mom," he said, his voice a flat, dead thing. The word was not an agreement to a sexual act. It was an unconditional surrender. It was the sound of a spirit breaking. The transgression that followed was not an act of heat or of passion. It was a quiet, chilling, and horrifyingly deliberate closing of a deal. There was no joy in it, no pleasure. It was the sterile, silent consummation of a corporate merger, an acquisition of a soul. I had exerted the full force of my power, my wealth, my emotional manipulation, and I had won. I had gotten what I wanted. I had ensured he could never truly leave me because I would now own a piece of him forever, a piece he could never buy back. The next morning I made the call. The full funds for his film were transferred to his account before he even woke up. The transaction was complete. We did not speak of what had happened. We did not need to. It was a new line item on our balance sheet, an unwritten clause in our contract, a debt that could never be repaid. He left that afternoon. As he stood by the door, his bags packed, he looked like a stranger in the expensive suit I had bought him. He was a ghost in his own life. "You'll do great things," I said, my voice sounding hollow in the cavernous foyer. He looked at me then, and his eyes were voids. "I know," he said. "I paid for it." He walked out the door without looking back. I was left alone in my vast, silent mansion, surrounded by my priceless art, my stunning views, my immense, suffocating wealth. I had finally made the ultimate acquisition. I had secured my most prized asset. But as I stood there listening to the sound of his car driving away, I understood the terrible truth of the deal I had made. I had bought his dream, but I had killed his spirit. I had kept him tethered to me, but I had destroyed my son. And in the final accounting, I was the one who was truly bankrupt. This is a story about power and the terrifying ways it can corrupt love. It's a story about the loneliness of wealth and the things we do to fill the emptiness inside us. It's a warning that some things should never be for sale. If this story made you think about the hidden transactions in our own lives, please subscribe to our channel for more content that isn't afraid to look into the darkness. You can buy anything in this world: loyalty, time, even the illusion of affection. But the soul has no price tag. And when you try to purchase what should only be given freely with an open heart, the only thing you truly buy is your own damnation. You are left the sole shareholder of a bankrupt heart in a beautiful empty empire of your own making.